اللهم المقام المحمود الذي وعدته إنك لا تخلف الميعاد. الحمد لله. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلن تجد له من دون الله وليا مرشدا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن سيدنا وإمامنا وحبيبنا وقائدنا ومعلمنا محمد هو عبد الله ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وحبيبه، بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح الأمة وكشف الأمة وتركها على المحجة البيضاء ليلها كنهارها لا يزيغ عنها إلا هالك. أما بعد. Alhamdulillah, all praise and thanks are due to Allah. We thank Him, we ask for His forgiveness, and we seek His guidance. Whomever Allah guides will never go astray, and whomever Allah misleads will never find the right path except through the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I bear witness that there is no God but God, one and only, with no associates, no partners, and no children, and that He subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, our teacher, our leader, our guide, the best of mankind, and our best example, to guide us on this straight path. And that He sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has delivered the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intact and complete as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended it to be delivered. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst those who believe in this message and be grouped with the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and the believers on the Day of Judgment and in the hereafter. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Ar-Rum, ayah 54, الله الذي خلقكم من ضعف ثم جعل من بعد ضعف قوة ثم جعل من بعد قوة ضعفا وشيبة يخلق ما يشاء وهو العليم القدير. It is Allah who created you in a state of weakness, then gave you strength after weakness, and then after strength gave you weakness and a gray head. He creates what He wills, and He is the all-knowing, the all-powerful subhanahu wa ta'ala. The strength between two weaknesses is the period of youth, the period of vigor, energy, and vitality. It is the period when we are asked about specifically on the Day of Judgment, as in the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he tells us that the servant is asked or will be asked about four: his life and how he lived it, his youth and how he spent it, his knowledge and what he has done with it, and his money, how he earned it, and in what way did he or she spend it. That is why it is essential for us to take care and pay close attention to this period of our lives and in the lives of our children, and be prepared to answer when questioned about it by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran gives us great examples of youth that we should all look up to and learn from. Youth who spent their precious years of their lives believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as their Lord and have been guided to the righteous path. The first example is that of Ibrahim alayhi salam, who refused to bow down to a statue and defied his father and entire people, refusing to, just as others do, and follow blindly. He stood up to what's right and fought for it. We learn in the Quran in Surah Al-Anbiya, إذ قال لأبيه وقومه ما هذه التماثيل التي أنتم لها عاكفون قالوا وجدنا آباءنا لها عابدين قال لقد كنتم أنتم وآباؤكم في ضلال مبين. When he said to his father, Ibrahim alayhi salam said to his father and his people, what are those idols, what are those images to whom you are devoted? And they said, well, we found our fathers worshipping them. And he said, indeed, you and your fathers have been in manifest error. And he argued their logic. He used logic to argue their logic and said, قَالَ بَلْ رَبُّكُمْ رَبُّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ الَّذِي فَطَرَهُنَّ وَأَنَا عَلَى ذَلِكُمْ مِنَ الشَّاهِدِينَ وَتَاللَّهِ لَأَكِيدَنَّ أَصْنَامَكُمْ بَعْدَ أَن تُوَلُّوا مُدْبِرِينَ. He said, nay, no, your Lord is the Lord of the heavens and the earth, who created them, and to that I am one of the witnesses. And by Allah, I shall plot a plan for your idols after you have gone away and turned your backs. فَجَعَلَهُمْ جُذَاذًا إِلَّا كَبِيرًا لَهُمْ لَعَلَّهُمْ إِلَيْهِ رَجِعُونَ. So he broke them into pieces, all except the biggest of them, that they may turn to it. قالوا من فعل هذا بآلهتنا إنه لمن الظالمين. And when they returned, they said, who has done this to our aliha, to our gods? And he must be indeed one of the wrongdoers. That's them talking after they've come back from their festival and they've seen what has happened to their idols. And some of them said, قالوا سمعنا فتى قالوا سمعنا فتى قالوا سمعنا فتى يذكرهم يقال له إبراهيم. They said, we heard a young man. We heard a young man talking against them who is called Ibrahim. A young man. A young man who challenged an entire community and did not care for what people may say or do, for he knew that he was on the right path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that it's ignorance and sin that his people are in is immoral and dissolute. قالوا أأنت فعلت هذا بآلهتنا يا إبراهيم. They said, have you or are you the one who's done this to our gods, or Ibrahim? And listen to the answer by which Ibrahim alayhi salam brings them back to their senses, even if it was for a short moment. He says, قال بل فعله كبيرهم هذا فاسألوهم إن كانوا ينطقون. He said, no, this one, the biggest of them, this biggest idol that's standing there untouched, he did it. Ask them if they can speak. فرجعوا إلى أنفسهم فقالوا إنكم أنتم الظالمون ثم نكسوا على رؤوسهم لقد علمت ما هؤلاء ينطقون. So they turned to themselves and said, verily we are the wrongdoers. But then they turned to themselves, returned to their original thought and said, indeed you, Ibrahim, know well that those idols do not speak. So they admitted that those idols do not speak, but they still went back to their faulty logic. And you know the story that follows where they prepared a fire and they threw Ibrahim alayhi salam in that fire, and Ibrahim was unfazed, defiant in his stance against idol worshipping and the injustices associated with such a practice. Then there's the example of Ismail alayhi salam, and the famous story that we all know about and we hear about every Eid, around Eid al-Adha. But let's take a moment to study that behavior and that interaction between Ismail and his father and the obedience of Ismail alayhi salam. We've all heard of the story of Ibrahim getting the wahi, or the vision from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to sacrifice his son. And Ismail, and how to sacrifice his son Ismail, and how Ibrahim told him of that vision. So see the respect of the father for the son. He's speaking to him and telling him about the vision that he had. And obviously, and of course, we all know that prophets and messengers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, their visions and dreams are all messages from Allah, their wahi, and a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Ibrahim says, فَلَمَّا بَلَغَ مَعَهُ السَّعْيَ قَالَ يَا بُنَيَّ إِنِّي أَرَى فِي الْمَنَامِ أَنِّي أَذْبَحُكَ فَانظُرْ مَاذَا تَرَى. He said, oh my son, I have seen in a dream that I am slaughtering you, or I am offering you in a sacrifice. Look at the respect. So look what you think. فَانظُرْ مَاذَا تَرَى. This command has come after Ismail has become a young, strong man, and he was the only son of Ibrahim at the time. At this point, Ibrahim alayhi salam, an old man. He's taken Ismail as an aid and a helper for him. Ismail, knowing and fully believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in his father and his message, was unshaken by the request. He was unstirred by it. He did not even stumble upon his words when he said, قَالَ يَا أَبَتِ فَعَلْ مَا تُؤْمَرُ. He said, O my father, do that which you are commanded. He did not say, إِفْعَلْ بِي مَا تُؤْمَرُ. He did not say, do unto me that which you have been ordered. He said, do that which you are ordered. He took himself completely out of it. He said, do that which you are commanded. And not only that, he was still eloquent and had good moral character or good manners at adab in his talking with his father. He said, سَتَجِدُنِي إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مِنَ الصَّابِرِينَ. That inshallah, God willing, you will find me of as-sabirin, or those who are patient. Ismail alayhi salam did not claim to be the hero. He did not claim courage, but has left his faith and belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his message to guide him and be his ultimate concern. And both the father and son have succeeded the test, as we all know, which Allah has put them through, and have shown the steadfastness and the strength of a believing Muslim. Another prime example that perhaps is more even relevant to us these days is another prime example of youth who stayed on the right path, fueled by their belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No matter what the obstacles or hardships might be, is Yusuf alayhi salam. Yusuf's patience has been tested in so many different stages of his life, even when he was a little child and thrown into the well. And in the period of his youth, he was patient and steadfast against temptation. Yusuf is known for his beauty. As a young man, he was a servant at the house of the Aziz of Egypt, or the Honorable of Egypt. He lived in that house, which was also occupied by the wife of the Aziz of Egypt, a woman who was taken by the beauty of Yusuf. She was taken by the beauty of Yusuf and overcome by her desires for him. A beautiful woman herself. And said, Allah says, وَرَاوَدَتْهُ الَّتِي هُوَ فِي بَيْتِهَا عَنْ نَفْسِهِ وَغَلَّقَتِ الْأَبْوَابَ وَقَالَتْ هَيْتَ لَكَ. And she, in whose house he was, sought to seduce him. And she closed the doors and said, come on. So imagine this for a moment, brothers and sisters. This young man, full of energy, full of hormones, is not being only approached, but rather aggressively sought after by a woman who would let him have his way with her. Yusuf alayhi salam could have justified the act in so many different ways. And people would have probably excused him, saying that, well, he's young. We hear that these days. Or he's a servant, he's a slave, we don't know where he comes from, they picked him up. He could have, but he alayhi salam did not, and said, قَالَ مَعَاذَ اللَّهِ قَالَ مَعَاذَ اللَّهِ إِنَّهُ رَبِّي أَحْسَنَ مَثْوَايَ إِنَّهُ لَا يُفْلِحُ الظَّالِمُونَ. So the first action of Yusuf alayhi salam, when he was faced with that temptation, is that he said, مَعَاذَ اللَّهِ, I seek refuge in Allah. I seek refuge in Allah, or God forbid, truly, he, your husband, or my Lord in the sense of, or my master in the sense of the person who I'm serving, he said, truly, he is my master. He made my living in a great comfort, so I will never betray him. Verily, the wrongdoers will never be successful. So instead of all the excuses that Yusuf had to do wrong, he had all the excuses and the alibis to do what is right. He sought refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and asked for his support in this moral challenge. And then he used the logic and decency and honesty and being faithful to the person who was good to him, to his master, and to his own self, for wrongdoers will never succeed. Yusuf alayhi salam was challenged again by the same woman, and she gave him the choice between doing what is wrong or going to jail. And said, and he alayhi salam said, قال ربي السجن أحب إلي مما يدعونني إليه. He said, oh my Lord, prison is dearer to me than that to which they invite me. That is the example of the young man who refused committing what is wrong and rose above his desires. And who can forget the story of Asma, the daughter of Abu Bakr, radiallahu anhuma, known for her noble descent and bravery. She chose Islam when she was nearly 14 years of age. And she was the 18th person to accept Islam. Her role during the hijrah, during the migration of the Prophet ﷺ, was not only that of one of the muhajirun who left their past behind. She didn't just simply leave the past and leave, seeking a land where freedom or worship was guaranteed, but she was one who helped guarantee the success of the Prophet ﷺ hijrah, along with that of his companion, her father Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. During the very first days of the Prophet ﷺ migration, he alayhi salam and Abu Bakr had had to hide for a couple of days in a small cave known as the Cave of Thawr, in a rocky mountain with the same name, the Jabal Thawr. Only the chosen few knew where the two great men were hiding. Among those was Asma, may Allah be pleased with her. Each night, unfazed by the dreariness of the rocky, dark desert, Asma would take food and drink to her father and his blessed companion, alayhi salam. A young woman of her age should not have taken the risk of being in such a rocky, mountainous, deserted place at night, especially with the political threats that were leveled at them due to the status of her father and the Prophet ﷺ. Yet Asma radiallahu anha went. How else would the two great men receive nutrition? They had to hide until the men of Quraysh gave up looking for them, and Asma knew this and knew the importance of her mission to help keep those two men alive, and it was the mission of keeping the faith alive. She received her well-known title of the She of the Two Belts for a gesture she made during her mission, wanting to carry both food and drink. She had no alternative but to take her belt or to tear her belt into two parts, a part for the food and a part for the water. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ named her Asma of the two belts. He then promised her that God subhanahu wa ta'ala would give her two belts in paradise. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله العلي العظيم لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness for myself and all of us. Ask Him for forgiveness and He shall respond, for He is the most gracious, the most merciful. الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد. The examples mentioned in the first Khutba, brothers and sisters, are only a few, and the Quran tells us about many more, such as Yahya, the people of the cave, and the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whose sunnah is an outline of the way a Muslim should be throughout the stages of his or her life. These stories are there to help us draw strength and wisdom from such people and their stories, and learn how to face challenges and tests from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. History and sunnah also tell us of young people that surrounded the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, such as Abu Bakr, who was 38, Umar, who was 28, and Ali, who was about 8 years of age, and the Zubayr ibn al-Awwam of a close age, as well as the greatest teacher of the prophetic hadith, Aisha. Those, to name a few, were the ones that stood by the Prophet ﷺ and on whose shoulders the religion of Islam had risen. They sacrificed their wealth and that which they possessed and put all of their energy for the promise of Allah, بِأَنَّ لَهُمُ الْجَنَّةِ, the promise of Allah that for them is paradise. They are the ones who carried the message of freedom from the Arabian Peninsula to the corners of the world, saying, as Rabi ibn Amir put it to Rustam, the leader of the Persian army, that Allah has chosen us to turn whom He chooses of His creatures from idol worship to monotheism, from the narrowness of life to its freedom, from rulers or religious injustice to Islam's fairness. And that was the ambition of those young people, a message of enlightenment and education. Where are we today from those people? At this time and age, we have some Muslims who would even hide their Islamic identity. They would hide their Muslim identity. Brothers and sisters in Islam, there are those who might argue that these stories are about prophets. These stories about their companions and what the prophets were taught by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His messenger Jibreel, and that their companions were right next to them to learn it right then and there, and they are of a higher moral status than we can ever be. As if they were angels roaming the earth at a fictional time way far back in the distance, that it has no relevance to today's world. Dear brothers and sisters, the only difference between me, you, and those people is faith. They're humans just like you and I. They are humans just like you and I. They face the same challenges, if not even more than what we face today. Ibrahim stood up not only to his own father, but also to the whole community in which he was brought up. Not only to his, in which he was brought up, he challenged the norm and the accepted, for he had faith in Allah's oneness, and there was no changing that. Yusuf's challenge is one that our youth face day to day, men and women alike. We face that challenge, men and women alike. Sexual desire is an innate human nature that if the hormones are not tamed, they can take over and they can overtake you and lead you on the path of sin. Yet Yusuf alayhi salam rose above it and chose the path of piety. and chose Allah over his perishable body and his perishable desires. Umar ibn al-Khattab had high social status in his community, and the fact of what he might lose did not even cross his mind when he reverted to Islam. Yet today, we fear that if I don't go to my boss's function, where the main thing, or they call it happy hour. I have it at work all the time. Happy hour, let's meet at this bar and have a couple of drinks. If I don't go to that, I worry that, what is my boss going to think of me? I might lose that promotion. We have this senseless worry that our risk, our provisions are in the hands of people. Abu Jahl, a major enemy of the Prophet ﷺ, went to Asma in search of the two runaway men, her father and the Prophet ﷺ, asking her about her father. Asma gave him no information, and her punishment was a slap on her face that broke her earrings. A woman of her dignity and her self-respect would not have tolerated such an incident except for the sake of a respected cause and a more dignified goal, which is the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, the stories we read in the Quran or the sunnah are not there to set an unachievable standard. They're not there to set a goal that would seem so far out of reach that it frustrates you. Be careful with that fact. These stories are there to show you that by increasing your faith, by working hard, and especially by training your own youth and raising it in the shadow of our religion, we can attain these high moral grounds and ultimately Jannah, inshallah. They are stories of success and hope that as big as the task may seem, or hard the challenge may be, it can be done, and we can all rise above it, inshallah. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت واصرف عنا برحمتك شر ما قضيت. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم وارزقنا جنتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم تقبل منا صيامنا وقيامنا وسجودنا وركوعنا وصلاتنا وصالح أعمالنا. اللهم لا تدع لنا في هذا اليوم العظيم ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا مريضا إلا شفيته ولا محروما إلا أعطيته. اللهم اغفر لنا أجمعين وتوفنا مسلمين يا رب العالمين يا أرحم الراحمين. Oh Allah, grant us the power to see what is right as right and grant us the power to follow. Oh Allah, we ask you to show us what's wrong as wrong and grant us the power to avoid it. Oh Allah, we ask you to make us amongst those who are released from the hellfire in this holy month. Ameen. Oh Allah, we ask you to keep us steadfast on his path. Oh Allah, we ask you to bless our youth and to guide them and keep them on the right path. Oh Allah, we ask you to keep our town safe and to keep us safe within our town. Oh Allah, bless this masjid. Oh Allah, bless all of the masajid and the houses of worship for you, oh Allah, in this world, in this community. Oh Allah, bless the Muslims. Allahumma ameen wa aqim as-salah.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
استقيموا واعتدلوا حاذوا بين المراكب والأقدام. First, straighten your lines, close the gaps, and fill up the spots, please, brothers and sisters. Brothers, tawassu tarahamu. Make room for your brothers. And please, if you have a cell phone, make sure it's turned off or on vibrate. وصلوا صلاة المودع and pray as it's your last prayer. Allahu Akbar. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء أحوى سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. والسماء والطارق وما أدراك ما الطارق النجم الثاقب إن كل نفس لما عليها حافظ فلينظر الإنسان مما خلق من ماء دافق يخرج من بين الصلب والترائب إنه على رجعه لقادر يوم تبلى السرائر فما له من قوة ولا ناصر والسماء ذات الرجع والأرض ذات الصدع إنه لقول فصل وما هو بالهزل إنهم يكيدون كيدا وأكيد كيدا فمهل الكافرين أمهلهم رويدا. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.